What's the name of your podcast?
I don't know.
Oh.
So hello everyone, welcome to the podcast. It doesn't exactly have a name quite yet, but my name is Anthony O'Hearn. My online persona is Sir Yanthan. Started off as a gaming persona, so perhaps we'll just call it the Anthony O'Hearn podcast or Sir Yanthan podcast. But I want to welcome our guest today. This is Krauss. He has a career in commercial acting and modeling, as well as having done directing, producing, writing. I'm not sure quite what all, but a little bit of everything, it seems.
Yeah, man of many hats.
Yes, and you almost kind of have to in order to get a good feel of everything.
Yep.
So
if you like the art, it's just great to dive into and learn different aspects of it.
Yep. Yeah, so this podcast in general doesn't really have a specific focus at the moment. It's going to be more of a variety one, where, but then specific episodes will have different topics. So I was thinking will be interesting that this dynamic could provide is he's very into traditional media, and I have always grown up with like the online media. So it would be interesting to discuss kind of those differences between the two, and then of course a lot of similarities too, especially with having to be a jack of all trades with everything. I have to know how to operate all my equipment, so that's something that certainly applies to both.
Absolutely. I think that bridges kind of the two lives we were just talking about, and I think ultimately the versatility and willingness to learn and do different aspects will make you very successful in this industry.
Yeah.
I think a lot of you who are watching are probably maybe in a similar way, where you're learning different aspects of, maybe you're producing something for YouTube, maybe you're making a video with your friends, and you shoot something and you're like, oh, this was cool, this was funny, and then you're like, but how could we make it look more like this video that we were watching? And pretty soon, before you realize it, you're learning kind of like the classroom of life, and out of necessity. What are you drinking there?
Trying to remember. I forgot the brand, but it is a butterscotch toffee.
Ooh, nice.
It's all right.
Nice.
Yeah.
And this is the Dunkin' Donuts original blend.
Yep.
Brewed up this morning by our barista in chief over here. It's delicious. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I think this has got to be one of those standards that's going to be on every podcast that you do, is having good coffee. Yeah.
Certainly, because I'm still relatively new to it. You've been drinking for coffee for I don't know how many years. I've just recently, a few months ago, or this last winter is when I got my first brewer that I can start making my own and really try out different things.
Nice.
So, but
Nice.
This certainly fuels many projects.
Yeah. So I started drinking coffee in 8th grade. Cappuccinos I started in 6th grade. I really liked them. They're very, they're sweet, it's like hot chocolate. So that was my gateway drug.
Yeah, I think definitely the more sugary ones, because I remember when I was little growing up, we would get cappuccinos after church if I behaved. or I would.
A good motivation.
Yep.
I don't remember you behaving that much in church, though.
Yeah, I didn't get them often.
I think that's usually, it would be like sometimes after school, but I don't think it was ever a reward for being well behaved. It was probably like if I actually got money for doing chores, and could kick in for like football cards, cappuccino, some beef jerky. Yeah. So that's good. And then you got, what is that, a Pokemon?
Yeah. So there's
mug?
actually a bit of a story behind this.
Oh.
So 2 winters ago, 2017 into 2018, when I was working construction, I was down in Mequon near Milwaukee, and I saw this, but I had forgotten my wallet. And I was so excited, like, I need to have that, but I couldn't, and I didn't see it. Or I went back there like a week later, and they were sold out.
Oh, man.
And that was it. And then like 6 to 8 months later, I see this in Green Bay, and I immediately was like, I have to have that.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I think I'd take that as a sign it was meant to be.
Yep.
Where did you get it?
Meijer.
Meijer.
Yep. And it was Meijer in
It's
both.
all at Meijer.
It is. And it was Meijer in both locations where I had seen it.
Okay.
Yeah. I went there way too often that winter. It's like a very nice version of Walmart.
It's so Coach McCarthy, who used to be the Green Bay Packers coach, I was having a conversation with Mason Crosby. This was about 2 years ago, and Mason and I were working on a commercial for the I think it's called that Tundra Lodge. No, Lodge Kohler. We were doing an ad for Lodge Kohler, which was just being built outside of Lambeau, and they were just starting to have people come stay there, and they had the new spas and everything put in. So anyway, Mason and I are shooting this commercial, and he was telling me that Coach McCarthy was super excited when Meyer came to Green Bay, and Mason was there and a couple of the other guys, and they were at training camp, and he says, Mike McCarthy just comes like blowing in like a storm, and he's like, guys, have you been to the new Meyer yet? And Mason wasn't quite knowing where he was going with this, and he's like, no. And and he's like, well, you've got to go. He's like, they've got everything there, and he starts listing everything off, and he's super like motivated about it. And of course, Coach McCarthy was in the Cellcom commercials too, so Mason's like, Coach, are you like their new endorser guy now, or what? And he's like, no, but you just gotta go.
That's such an interesting thing for someone like him to be so passionate about.
The man loved his Meyer. He loved his Meyer stores. But then funny, about a half year later, maybe more, I went into a Meyer store, and there was like a cardboard cutout of Coach McCarthy. So if he wasn't actually handpicked to be the endorser of the company, he quickly became it by his enthusiasm, because there he was.
Oh, man. Is he actually like associated with them then?
Well, he must be. If his cutouts in there, he must have at least done a still shoot with them. But I've never seen him on like a Meyer ad, as far as like a actual video commercial or web or anything like that.
I think he should, because I don't think there would be any sort of conflict of interest.
Well, he's not our coach anymore.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that too.
Yeah.
So yeah,
that was a sad day. Let me tell you. That my heart broke for that guy. Yeah.
Some context for the viewers: I'm not really into sports that much, so it wasn't a sad day for me.
I ebb and flow. If the Packers are doing good, I'm right there with them. Hence, by the way,
yes.
100 seat. This is the 100-year.
That is a big milestone.
Yeah.
Even though, even if I'm not really interested in it that much, I'll admit that is a big deal.
Yeah. Well, we're gonna segue into how technology has changed, and how I've stuck with more traditional. You've gone to this advanced, and to think of the Packers 1919 to 2019, to think of how much the world has changed. To think of we've gone through 2 world wars, right? From 1919.
And the Cold War.
Vietnam, Korea. When we were winning our Super Bowls in, 67, we were up to our neck in Vietnam and the protests, and we were, knocking on the door of Woodstock. And then you get up through 80s, 90s, and I was having a conversation with my dad to think 30 years it took for us to not just to get to a Super Bowl, but to even get to a championship. To have those glory years and those golden years, and then have a lull of 30 years where we just weren't a very good football franchise.
And that's a long time, too, because don't they cycle out coaches more often than that?
Yeah.
And especially players.
Yeah.
So you'd think at some point you'd get someone decent in there.
Well, and it really goes to program building, that you needed somebody from the top to start building and have a lot of seasons of just okay to get to a place where you could actually have a Super Bowl team.
Yeah.
But we're not a sports podcast, so we won't deviate too much into that.
I was just thinking at some point I'm gonna trace back to what you're saying before about potential viewers being the type of people that maybe they made a silly video with friends and started wanting to modify some things. And there certainly is that aspect of imitation before innovation. And the whole imposter effect, where when people are new, they feel like they're just copying people and not doing something of their own.
Yeah.
So that just takes time.
The highest form of flattery.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that I definitely would not have gotten as far as anyone if it weren't for online media that I can have all these resources to learn from as well.
Yeah.
So tying into with the sports thing, how so much has changed. We've had the entire industrial revolution, and then the technology behind all this has changed, and then the way we use it, these different platforms that have appeared, has completely changed the way we interact with all these medias. And then, as we were talking a little bit before the podcast, how everyone has a smartphone, and in a weird way, everyone is a creator.
I have an Android.
Yes, that's a smartphone.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
The new and the old.
Yeah,
The old and the new.
Yeah, you can tell he's definitely he's more of like the story guy or the writer guy. When I have ideas, every time I bring an idea to you, you say, "But how can you make a story out of that?" Whereas I'm always so fixated on, like, I've built my own computer. I have all these different softwares that I'm playing around with.
Yeah, this is a wonderful setup. If you were able to see this studio, this is very impressive as to what you've put together here.
I'll post a picture of it when the desk is cleaner.
Yeah, that'd be good. But
Yeah.
you know, this looks like a good video editor's desk. Like if you're really a video editor, your desk would look like this. If I came into an office and the guy was talking to me about everything he can do and he didn't have some sign of life on his
Yep.
desk and shelves, I would
Yes.
say, do you even work? Because no video editor has a cleaning person come in and clean up. Like, that would just be chaos in an editor's life, right?
Yeah, well, because then you don't know where anything is.
Exactly.
Like, it's organized chaos. It may look like a mess to other people, but I know where things are. And
It's not just chaos.
there was many more signs of life in the 20 minutes before you arrived when I
Sure,
was cleaning up
sure.
my messes.
Well-
I'll own up to that.
You got to keep the product placement of the Cocoa Krispies like that. That needs to be a thing.
I may have to bleep that.
Oh yeah, you
No, I'm
probably
kidding.
will. Yeah.
I'll leave it in. If they get upset about that, then they're insane.
Well,
Oh yeah, you got the whole Bud.
I know, I'm wearing
stuff.
Budweiser.
Yep.
Nobody's upset about that.
And the chair you've got.
The chair is, yeah. So what's the story with this chair and this shirt you gave me?
So the chair originated from my dad.
Okay.
I don't know, it was his, and I just kind of claimed it because it's comfortable.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, that's-
and he's a Bud guy.
Yeah.
He's a solid endorser of Budweiser.
Yeah, I always forget the difference between like Bud and Budweiser and Bud Light and all those mixes. So whichever one he drinks plenty of it.
So the Bud Light is that's less alcohol content and consequently less calories. So my guess is he's a Bud Light guy because he likes his beer, but he doesn't ever put on any beer weight.
I don't know, because it.
Whereas
it's-
I will drink beer and I will show it within hours. I will get jolly.
Yeah, well, and there's certainly an aspect of genetics there, because like him and I and my brother were all very thin.
Mm-hmm. And your sister.
Yes.
Yeah.
No, can't leave her out of that.
Yeah. Yeah. You guys
Actually,
are
she's
all-
probably the thinnest of us all.
Yeah. That's a good genetic to have. I think unless I know you were trying to bulk up for a time and.
Yeah, I'm still very slowly trying to work on that. Just put on muscle because like little twig arms. Yep. Yes. So I suppose on mentioning family, we could give some context as well. Kurt is my cousin.
Oh yeah.
So this works well that we're just always talking about stuff all the time. Whenever we're working together on different things that you invite me out to help out with fundraisers and to be a background guy in projects.
Yeah.
At the very least to get some experience of like watching other people work and see how I can do that. And then if we're like watching Stranger Things, which we need to get back to at some
Yeah.
point.
What season are we at? We're season 2 yet?
Yep,
Are
we're a
we-
little bit into season 2.
Yeah.
And
It's really good so far.
it's so good.
Yeah. So good.
Like, I think it was around episode 5 where I started getting cravings of like, oh, I need to watch more.
Yeah, the first one, the first episode, I'm like, I could take it or leave it. I thought it was good.
Yeah.
I thought, writing was good. But yeah, you get a couple more into it and you're like, okay, now I'm hooked.
Yep,
Yeah.
because episode 1 was just very good at introducing all of it.
Mm-hmm.
And then they slowly start hooking you in 2 and 3.
Yeah.
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 But yeah. So,
That sounds like a good segue point.
yes it does, if only I could figure out where it's going to go.
Well, Stranger Things, so you can I guess the subject matter of our podcast is the changing of formats, and what Stranger Things being, to my understanding, a Netflix original.
I think so, yeah.
Netflix and Hulu and these streaming services have provided a platform for content in a way we've never had before as viewers, as creators. And if ever a time to get into this, maybe it was a year ago, 2 years ago, but anyway, now is really a good time to be involved in production, and maybe you do have an idea that could one day become a show where they are purchasing story, they're investing in story to do original content on Netflix, and I believe Hulu as well is doing this now.
Yeah, so if my understanding's right, Netflix is more about movies and Hulu's more about shows. Mm-hmm. Seems to be the direction they're kind of going to, so that they can coexist nicely. But I like how you mentioned about with different platforms and the idea of like maybe the time was a year ago. I see that on pretty much every platform where they're talking about like, oh, if you want to do this type of content in this place, the best time was 6 years ago or 6 months ago or ever.
Yeah.
And so
that should actually be a T-shirt. If you're looking for your sign to move on something, it was a year ago. I'll go back to work.
Yeah, so that was something I was thinking about recently, actually, is trying to figure out, thinking in terms of like 5 years from now, when we look back from then, what type of content would be best to produce now in 2019, 2020, kind of having, like the same way we're looking back and be like, oh, I should have been making this at this time. Maybe the future will say, oh, I should have been making this during 2019, 2020, because certainly with a lot of these things, there has to be a balance between what you want to make and what does well.
Yeah.
And if you want to work on things and gather attention and build skill sets and build work. Because that's something I know we've gone back and forth about, is the whole quality versus quantity.
Yeah.
So I know you are, and I by default are very much quality first. But more and more, I'm kind of being forced into this idea of quantity, and then getting the quality from the quantity and getting that practice. Mm-hmm. That's kind of where I'm at. And that's another reason why I'm making these, is because I spend so much time in editing, and my goal with this is to have it completely uncut so that I can practice being unedited and practice just doing things right the first time and not having to repeat myself 8 times until I get the right take. Yeah. Because I do that with YouTube, where I'll just say the same thing over and over and over until it feels right. And it's such a waste of time.
Like a lot of politicians.
Yeah. Yeah.
Over and over again until it feels right. This time with conviction.
Yeah. Oh, man. And that's certainly something that's been around for a long time, too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so kind of looking ahead, and you doing things with YouTube a lot more than I do. Like I post once in a blue moon. I do see them taking steps to where I wonder with things, I think they call it YouTube Red.
Yep, they're essentially trying to become Netflix.
Yeah, so anything on my radar right now says that that's probably the next mover. Now, if they get there, great. But if we were to ask that question just right off the bat, what do I see on the radar? I see a very well-established Netflix, but I also knew Netflix before it was the Netflix we know it to be now. Netflix, when I was younger, was like ordering something and it showed up at your house as a DVD.
Was it really?
I think so.
So kind of like a Redbox or I think Blockbuster did that.
Yeah, so if I'm wrong,
they'll let us know.
Yeah, viewer audience, let me know that I'm wrong, because maybe, as you said, Redbox, I'm starting to second guess myself. But I think that was the early Netflix.
Because I know there was GameFly where you could do that with video games.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure if you could do that with movies.
Yeah, so if I'm wrong about that, let me know, because again, old. New, yeah. New, old. But then later Netflix, we had what was called a Nintendo Wii.
Oh yeah.
which I don't think they're making Wii's.
No.
If I'm wrong about that, let me know.
No,
as
they're
well.
definitely not making Wii's anymore.
Okay, so Netflix we could get through the Nintendo Wii, and Netflix was old TV shows. Not old, but like shows that were off the air.
Yep.
Um,
Because you'd
like,
have to wait a year or two generally before new stuff would show up on there.
yeah, and there'd be okay movies, sometimes good movies, a whole lot of in-between movies. But what I really liked about Netflix in those days, and I think they still have it, I just haven't explored it as much, was you could get the independent film channel, and it would be a bunch of independent films that had been submitted and accepted by Netflix. Even it was kind of like doing a mini film festival in your own living room where you could watch independent films, and you could watch, even better, independent foreign films, which if ever you just needed to disconnect and escape to something other than what you always do, I would go to those independent foreign films, and I would find such beauty in what foreign filmmakers were doing. And that was like mid Netflix. Now we have Netflix, which has really
about what year was that when all that was happening?
I'd say like 2012, 2013, 2014. It was when I was just getting back into doing all of this. I'd been on a hiatus for a number of years, and had come back into it, and was just that was kind of my school of my place of education, was to sit and see how other, especially foreign filmmakers, were telling story. And I didn't necessarily have to understand the language. I'd have subtitles, but they were doing things that through the acting, through the camera work, you definitely knew what was going on.
Yeah, because there's a lot of that stuff that's very universal, with the different camera angles, the shot composition, the pacing, all that.
What's said, what's not said.
Yeah.
It's a wonderful orchestra. It really is. I love the art.
I think that's one of the things I like about it so much too, is how you can put the entire lifetime into it and never truly master it all, because there's just so much.
I have a project like that, by the way. A feature film that I think kind of fits that mold.
Yeah, definitely.
But so Netflix now has become this thing where it really is the best of the best, I believe. Where you're getting the shows everybody can't wait to watch. You have the original content that people can't wait to watch, and they can't wait for the next season to drop. It's an exciting time for Netflix, and I think it's an exciting time for any of us who've dreamt of having our work being, having a platform that national and international audiences can watch. Netflix, I think, has been the front runner in that. So
yeah, definitely. Because
hats off, guys. Hats off.
I would if I had one. Okay, I need this one. Hakuna Matata. Hats off.
Hakuna Matata. What a wonderful phrase.
Wonderful. So yeah, I was going to tie that back to my skepticism with YouTube Red.
Oh yeah.
Because they're trying to compete with Netflix, but Netflix does it so well, and YouTube Red, they've had several originals. A couple of them are supposedly really good. I haven't gotten to watch them yet.
What are the names of some of these YouTube originals?
So there's like the...
I want to be a YouTube original.
Yeah, that would be good.
See, this is what I'm talking about.
But clarify.
Well, maybe... I have no idea what the submission process would be if you were to create something and say, okay, this is my proof of concept, YouTube.
So generally, it's people that are already making content for the platform and gathering intention, and then...
So like a Paul Logan would be a good...
No?
No,
he's bad.
Old, young, old. I just know him through his Vines, which, quick segue going back to what we were talking about with... he was somebody that I thought did the quality and the quantity well, but I think to do a 30-second Vine was a way to develop that and really evolve.
I'd forgotten I was going to say that with Vine and TikTok, which is kind of like the new Vine for now. These are great platforms that are, as you were saying very early on in this episode, how it's a place to get that practice and get a start.
Yeah. And
then you can start moving on to these other things, like going from these very short film videos, like 30 seconds, to 10-minute YouTube videos, to 30-minute short films. It's a very natural progression. Like, there's a lot of Vine people that became YouTubers.
I believe it.
Yep. So we just went on like 8 tangents, and I don't remember where we were.
It bridges it back, but going back to YouTube Red was
Yes,
and
where
where
was it?
you-
Oh, right.
Yeah.
So there was Vsauce, I think it was called. Michael Vsauce did that show. He does amazing videos with like educational stuff. Yeah, and you
that was my. I'm not sure.
and you don't watch much YouTube either, do you?
I do like YouTube tutorials, and then I watch like old episodes of old shows.
Yeah, and so I think that's another thing too, is how YouTube has such a culture around it.
Yeah.
It's almost like its own country, that I find it fascinating, because like I've been so a part of that my whole life. Like, I started making YouTube videos in 2009, so I've been in that the whole time.
That's awesome.
I
I didn't realize you were going that long.
Oh yeah,
Yeah. So this is like your 10-year anniversary of being a YouTuber.
Yeah, like sometime within the next
Happy
couple months.
anniversary.
Yeah, there is that. I could go on a quick tangent about that too. Of like, I didn't know you weren't aware that I've been doing it that long. I've been on YouTube longer than I think all of the top 100 creators on YouTube, but I never stuck with it. So like this spring was my reset point of like, I know I'm going to be making a lot of really cringy trash videos, but I have to just keep putting things out and get the quality from the quantity to like get practice and get back to it.
Maybe you want to clarify what exactly cringeworthy trash videos are.
Like it's okay. So I recently just heard a quote from Gary Vee of that solidified.
Uncle Gary?
No, not your Gary that you do with Chris.
Oh.
Gary. Save that for another time.
We'll save that for another time. Maybe you could have Gary as a
Oh man.
special guest.
We should just have both the Garys, and I can just sit there and watch.
Yeah. I was going to invite him to a runway.
Where are we?
Going back to Gary Vee, a quote.
Oh, thank you.
Yes.
So yeah, he had a quote that solidified or like explained well something I was already understanding. Is what was the quote? I don't know, but the
We totally snowballed, and I apologize.
We totally snowballed. That's okay.
This was going back to you've changed your format.
I want to salvage this. So
Okay.
So the whole idea of that was the quote. Okay, got it. Quantity is objective, quality is subjective. If you put out a video a week, you've put out a video a week. If you stop that video and only put it out once a month because you want it to be better, in the end, you've really only put out that video a month.
Mm-hmm.
So while I'm putting out the best that I can to get that practice, when I look back on it, then it's bad because I've worked hard, because I've put in that practice and gotten better at it. So I'm already looking at things and be like, oh, this is terrible, but it was good to me at the time.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's just inevitable with anything creative, that the more you make things and then look back on your things, you're going to nitpick and perfectionist around it and be like, oh, I should have changed all these things to make it better. So there's another tangent.
Well, I think it was director Michael Moore said, and I just saw this quote recently, but I got to work. I'm sorry, not Michael Moore, Michael Mann. Very different guys, but each established in their. Oh no,
looks like they both quit.
As I butcher my quote.
Okay, I'd forgotten.
Didn't want to edit, huh?
I'd forgotten Canon cameras stop after 30 minutes.
Okay, well that's a nice.
Yeah, it can be for like saving on files.
One, and noting time.
Yes.
Because then it's like, okay, now we can move into the second half of the show.
So this will be unedited.
Where we eat chili peppers.
Not this episode.
Okay.
My stomach's not ready. I do have a couple jars of jalapenos in the other room.
Oh, nice.
Oh, mail's here.
I would not be able to sleep here. That was as ghostly of a sound as I've ever heard.
Oh, there's far worse.
Oh, I bet.
Because the context for the viewers, I live here,
Oh, are we running?
Yes.
Oh.
Yes, we've been running.
Thought we were still on break. I was about to let out a belch.
Oh, go ahead.
No, that's fine.
I'll mute it.
So we're not, okay, so...
So ghastly sounds. Next door is a small engine repair shop. So they're running engines 24/7, loading up trailers at 3 a.m. Those guys are just going nonstop, working hard. So props to them, but they keep me up at night.
For the rest of us who aren't working hard.
Right, so...
Okay, so yeah, going back to the...
Oh, examples.
Examples, yeah.
There was Michael Vsauce. He does very educational videos, and he like really dives into all kinds of crazy scientific and mathematical things. So he had a very interesting show where he did something about the mind, where he would do different mind experiments, and at one point he had taken ayahuasca and did stuff like that. There was another one...
He did that on the show?
Yes.
Oh.
Yeah, it was a big deal, but he went like somewhere where it's legal. So the show
Peru, probably.
I think so. Yeah, so, and then there was...
Or Brazil.
There was Scare PewDiePie. So PewDiePie being the top creator, he got his start by playing horror games. So they took all these horror games and made them real. Now, this show actually got canceled because he had some, like, he did some stuff that was taken very out of context, and it just wasn't, I guess, whether it was his fault or the viewer's fault of him not framing it and giving enough context, or whether the viewer's fault for misunderstanding. Regardless, people got upset at his video, so they took his show down. And then there was one with, I think it was Logan Paul, or his brother or something, and their show I think got taken down because they did something very bad on their channel as well. They were in Japan in a suicide forest. There's a forest specifically where like that's just where people go to commit suicide, and they just straight up vlogged a dead body and they're laughing at it, and that was not good. So
yeah, that's too bad.
And then there's the whole like dissonance between YouTube Red and YouTube, where there's all these things that aren't allowed on YouTube, but then they'll turn around and do the exact same things that aren't allowed. They'll do them on YouTube Red. So that's why I think that YouTube Red doesn't have the potential that Netflix does, because there's just so much inconsistency with their policies. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of that really started up when Disney bought Google, and therefore YouTube. So they're trying to turn YouTube into like a family-friendly Disney place, and it just doesn't work like that. That's not what YouTube is meant to be.
Well, it could be. It
could be, but it's not.
Like, I kind of like the idea of a family-friendly Disney place. For somebody who's only been to Disneyland twice and loved it.
I've never been.
Oh, you gotta go. Dude, the Magic Kingdom is truly a magical experience.
I have heard, actually, that Disneyland is better as an adult than as a kid. Like, people tend to enjoy it more and they remember it more.
Yeah.
I guess I'm kind of glad that I didn't go as a kid, because I know I wouldn't have remembered it.
Well, that's true.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I think as an adult, especially as an adult when you need nostalgia...
Yes.
You need nostalgia. To go to a place like Disneyland is, it's heartwarming. It really is. And the fireworks show at the end of it, to music and narration, is it's powerful.
They do like big shows there or something?
They do fireworks shows at the end of every night.
Oh, every night.
If I'm wrong about that, let us know. I believe it's every night.
the viewers or the commenters will let us know. That is one thing that
every time I've been there, there's been fireworks at the end of the day. Like, we'll stay until evening and watch the fireworks show. And I was there 2 years ago, and they were still shooting the fireworks off.
So the commercials aren't lying then, when they show the fireworks on the commercial every time.
The one thing I have never seen Tinkerbell fly over like they do at the beginning of every, so that might be a lie, but everything else is all that and more.
Nice. And that's another thing that I was going to mention too, is just because all this new media is gathering so much attention doesn't devalue the old media. There's still
exactly.
Certainly a place for all of it, really, I think.
Well, I was listening to a radio program, and this specifically with how some of the old is coming back. Now, we obviously see that in fashions, and we're seeing a lot of 80s, 90s looks happening now. But one of the things that, particularly with the success of Instagram, I've heard that there's been a lot of purchases of these cameras that we thought were long gone.
Yeah, the 8mm.
Yep. But also, 8mm, also like the ones that our parents would have where you could take 40 pictures on a camera and then have them developed. Mm-hmm. People, especially Instagrammers, liked the quality of that because it looked more authentic than our cameras are so good now on our cell phones that they almost look too produced. Going back to too produced versus...
Well, because generally with the technology, it's always trying to go for the absolute more realisticness, like perfect color accuracy, pixel accuracy, to make sure everything looks exactly the same on the screen as it does in real life, versus these older cameras, the analog cameras, they create a certain aesthetic to them. They have different tints to the film or whatever. And then also a lot of people that are transitioning from amateur to more enthusiast for photography and film. I see a lot of people wanting to go back to these because it creates an additional challenge, and then also because you can get you can do different things with those cameras that you can't do as easily or at a comparable price in digital. If you want to do those same things in digital, you have to get a much more expensive camera, versus you can go on eBay and just buy any old camera and it'll basically function for you.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And there's certainly still value in having physical pictures. That's something that it's kind of odd that it's fading away.
Well, I saw Polaroid has now got this new camera out, and it's a new looking camera, but it's really the same old Polaroid. The same reason we've always loved Polaroids. You take the picture, it shoots out, you wave it out, and now you've got your picture, and you can give that to people. And I'm glad to see that they're making a comeback, because I mean that's something from like when I was growing up. If your friend had a Polaroid camera, our cousin had a Polaroid camera, it was the coolest thing. You couldn't wait to see your picture. And even this was cool at my cousin's wedding. He actually had a bunch of these Polaroid cameras out, and when couples would show up, you'd get them to stand together, take their picture, and then you would decorate the table with it and ultimately put them in an album. So they had pictures of all the guests as they arrived, and kind of a neat way to remember your wedding on a day when, as bride and groom, your mind is in 100 different places, and you never slow down. You're just moving from one thing to the next, to get through the day.
That is pretty cool. So he was just there at the wedding, or was he part of the photography crew?
So he got married, and then he entrusted myself and another cousin to take all of the pictures.
Okay.
And so you just do it and put it all together. But he had some friends from the fraternity who came, and they did some goofy pictures, and it was a good wedding. But anyway, to see Polaroid, that was back in 2003 that wedding was. So to see Polaroid making the comeback that it is, I think it continues to play to that same reason. There's a nostalgia to it. It has a very unique look. When you're holding a Polaroid picture because of the white edges, and then of course the aesthetic of it.
I was gonna say also, like we sell those at Target because I work at Target. I stock the shelves.
He's also an electronics specialist.
Sometimes. I'm a terrible salesman though, so they don't like when I go over there.
You specialize. You don't have to be. I suppose you do, but
I explain things to the guests so they understand what they're buying, but I often explain to them why they don't need the expensive one, and I tell them that this one will fit their specific situation just as well, and then they get the cheaper one, and they didn't like that, so they tried to keep me out of electronics. I did that like, I don't know, 4 or 5 times where I talked to people, or people told me what they were going to be doing with the TV, how they were going to be using it, and I was like, oh, you don't need this one, you can do this. I did that like 4 or 5 times. And then I realized, oh no, this is not my job. They're not going to like this.
You're supposed to upsell, not downsell.
Yeah, I don't do that. No, I was just going to say too, it's interesting to see how nostalgia is affecting so much. And Stranger Things being set in the 80s and nostalgia and these Polaroids and all this stuff coming back.
Mm-hmm.
I do wonder, like 5 years from now, if that's going to be another phase, or like if we'll be no longer doing that, or if we'll be nostalgic about something else, or if these things are going to stick around. Like I also think about too, if electric cars were to take over and become the norm, and fully automatic self-driving cars, I could see there being a huge resurgence in fully manual vehicles with like carburetors instead of injectors, manual for the people that just like engines.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see how this plays out like 15 years from now, if we really do have both of these coexisting, being so different.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think you'll always have your subculture. So in the car world, you've got your classic car lovers. You're always going to have them. And then the same way, I think, for people in our industry, people who learned and loved, and there's a place in their heart for the old. That'll be the subculture. The interesting thing will always be when it becomes a fad, where all of a sudden it's bridged, and you have a lot of in-betweeners who are all of a sudden taking an interest in something. And I think that's what we're kind of seeing with Instagram. And
Yep.
I
was just about to mention Instagram too, is how that's just taken over. I think they're the number one social media platform right now, and there's so many people that are, I guess, influenced would be an appropriate word, into doing things that they would not normally do. Like they're getting these cameras not because they enjoy the old cameras, but because it's the cool thing to do on Instagram. And I can't wait for them to like stop doing that, because eventually that's going to wear out, and they're not. And then people are going to start doing the things that they actually want to do. Because I find it just insane how many people will go rent a fancy car and pose in front of it for a picture.
Yeah.
Like, what are you doing?
Yep.
Yeah.
I see a lot of because again I'm usually in the know of things that are happening in the area for maybe production crew calls and that type of thing, and there's a significant amount of people who want to hire people specifically to be their Instagram photographer or their Instagram stylist.
Yeah.
Like it's really becoming, and this is when we ask the question of what's the up and coming thing, like what's the next thing that you want to be on board, so you're not wearing the shirt that says, if I was looking for my sign to move, it was a year ago. We see these things, and that it is the trend. What does that trend evolve into? Because if they're hiring production people for production quality photos, does Instagram at some point, now I know they have the HGTV, it's like, does Instagram at some point,
IG.
old new, does Instagram eventually have its own channel that people are buying into, and you all of a sudden have Instagram original series?
Ooh.
Ooh, did I just say that? Did I just say that?
That's an interest you just may be the first person to ever have documented that concept.
So
could you imagine?
You saw it here.
Oh no, my battery.
Well, my camera's still going.
Oh, that's good. Could you imagine, say, several years from now, I don't know, 4 years from now, if Instagram did that?
I absolutely could. This is why I laughed out loud, by the way, when you said you didn't want to edit.
Oh.
Because the best laid plans ultimately lead to more editing.
Yeah, so there are adapters that I can get that I could record this into my computer as if these cameras are webcams.
That's cool.
But I don't have that budget yet.
So we got about 15 minutes to this show, a little give or take with the delays. But I think we're following some good thought.
So that's another interesting part too, is a lot of people talk about how the internet is the TV and the TV is the radio. How TV took over and the radio became kind of irrelevant for quite a while, and to a degree still is.
Disagree. I think everything has its place still.
Yeah,
but I hear what you're saying.
I don't know if the radio will ever completely go away. No, actually, I'll say, yeah, I do think radio will entirely disappear, but the thing I was going to transition into is that these core skills and concepts translate over. So this is a radio show. but it's over the internet instead of over the radio.
Well, there's video too.
Yeah, and so we'll have.
That's the cameras.
Yeah, so that's another huge similarity that definitely doesn't go away. Is that these core fundamental formats translate over. So radio show into podcast, TV show into Netflix series. It's all kind of the same in the end. It's just the mediums are changing.
Yeah, like the old soap operas, for example. We knew them on TV, but really they originated as radio dramas.
Yes.
And
which originated as people telling stories around the campfire.
And somewhere in between on stage, the dramas,
Yes.
from Shakespeare on. Yep. So it is an evolution for sure of communication, which is pretty wonderful in that regard. I've told you being.
I didn't sync.
Oh.
Okay.
I don't think you're in focus.
Am I?
I think you're out of focus.
Technical difficulties.
Hopefully not for the whole thing.
Let me just put on
Otherwise, I'm gonna put a big smiley face over you.
Okay. So
Were you on auto or manual?
I was on manual.
Ah,
Now I'm on auto. I thought I had it
Good
set
choice.
to a good focus, but
hopefully you did.
maybe I bumped it.
Otherwise, we can do this round two.
No.
We'll do a round two after we get back from diving.
No, I refuse. That is my biggest pet peeve.
What's that?
Or maybe not my biggest, but certainly one of my top 5 is lost footage or having to redo things.
Oh
I
yeah.
hate it so much.
Yeah, that's fair. Though sometimes it's rewarding when you shoot something a different way and it's so much cooler the second time.
Yeah.
When it doesn't go as planned.
Yeah, I guess it's if I'm doing the exact same thing over, that drives me nuts.
Yeah.
Nuts.
Oh, I know. I know. I've had to edit the same 3-hour film over from the beginning. And now I'm on cut 7.
Yeah.
It's amazing I'm still alive. But anyway, so going back to the changing format. The value I see in broadcast and broadcast radio, broadcast TV, and I hope that it never goes away, is that this is something that can still be protected, and this kind of goes as a moral responsibility, as ways of news, as ways of alerting people in emergency. That I think it was a year or so ago, there was something that was being proposed in the national legislation, that would have made it more difficult for access through internet. There was going to be at some point I don't know if it was internet taxation, but it was going to be a limit on internet or paying for internet.
So
And
that did pass.
I forget what they call it.
I forget as well, but essentially what it does is allows the internet service provider or your ISP to restrict or throttle you from different websites. So let's say, I have Spectrum Internet. Let's say for whatever reason, Spectrum and Netflix got in some sort of disagreement. They could just straight up be like, nope, Spectrum users can't watch Netflix. But luckily that has not happened yet.
Yeah,
but it is allowed now. So it's the thing, that's another huge difference as well between the internet and the TV is the internet, all these platforms are open and free. Anyone can get a phone and in 5 minutes have a Facebook and Instagram and YouTube and be uploading. There's no, what's the term? There's no gatekeeper. Versus TV, you have to write up your script, make a proof of concept, bring it to a board and present it and try to convince them, and then they can say no or yes or whatever, or you have to change this. With the internet, you can just post anything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, and I think there's definitely value. There's definitely value in that. But going back to broadcast, I'm saying that if at any point a government regulation, which they could, because you see it in other countries, shuts down the internet, takes over the internet, limits internet, what you have in broadcast is open airways. As long as those stations are open, you can continue to bring a voice. So
kind of.
I'm suspicious of everything that's relying solely on satellite, because especially when you have international conflict, something could happen that restricts or completely does away one day with satellite access, whereas broadcast, it's here.
They've done the same thing with TV, though. I mean, look at Nicaragua. Didn't he shut down all the TV stations, right?
He shut down all the non-government TV stations.
Yeah, so they can do the same thing right there. And actually, I'd argue it's maybe even a bit easier, because with analog signals, you can just put out a signal jammer, or I think that's the word, RF jammer.
I think in Nicaragua, he just raided the TV stations altogether.
Yeah, that's much easier. But like, if worse came to worse, they could just jam all the signals. Versus, I don't think you can do that with digital, or maybe you can, but maybe just not as easily.
I'm not sure.
I don't remember the physics of it.
Yeah, I'm not the tech guy to be asking on this. I could give an opinion, but it would be completely unsubstantiated.
So I guess that's something where, I guess that's one aspect where we kind of end up equal, where any government could just shut down either one. I think they're both as susceptible.
Yeah. Well, I like having the option of having the one if the other happens. So somebody, because if the internet goes down, it's going to be on the radio that you're going to hear people calling in, being like, "Well, I can't get my internet today." People still call into radio shows, and
people still write letters,
and they still write letters. And as far as like TV stations go, they still have community corners where you can come in and talk about what's going on TV. It's usually live. And anyway, so I do see value to broadcast still, and I hope it will always be a thing. But I understand, it would be one more way to keep people informed. But look at newspaper, look at radio. If you go to their websites, what do they all feature is video. Mm-hmm. And that was something when I was going to school for communications. They were having all of the communications majors, whether you're going to be in print journalism, whether you're going to be in radio and TV. All of us had to learn and be very good at video, because they said, you're not just going to write a story anymore for the newspaper. You're also going to be writing one for a website, and you're going to be including video, because video was ultimately going to be the medium. Because I love sitting down and reading a newspaper, but if I need my news quick, I'm going to that website. There's going to be a short news story, as if it was done by a local TV station, but it's just going to be a short news story with video or with a recording that you click on, you get it in 30 seconds, you move on. And that's the pace we're at now.
And that's really what got me to like fall in love with the power of video. Is when you shoot a video, you can extract the audio, and you can have a podcast. You can have like just little audio blips. You can you can have that transcribed into text, and you can have an article. You can then edit that article and make it polished.
Absolutely.
You can take stills from the video. Video turns into everything.
Video killed the radio star.
Yes.
That was a prophecy.
Yeah.
That was really a prophecy. That sums up everything we're talking about.
Did that song come out like when MTV was just first starting?
I think it was the first music video on MTV.
The first one?
Yeah.
That's fascinating.
I think that was the very first music video that played on MTV. If I'm wrong about that, let me know.
That's actually really fascinating too, because MTV was already pretty much dead and gone by the time I started being aware of all these spaces.
Well, it's strange that something like MTV doesn't continue to do music videos the way that they...
And they totally could.
And totally should.
Yeah.
Now, granted, in the 80s, in the 80s, we weren't really allowed to watch it, so how I even had access to it was like going to my cousin's house or going to a grandparent and like watching MTV when they weren't in the room. But it's like there was some pretty provocative music videos even in the 80s. Like I think they've had to tone it down in the 90s, but in the 80s there were things, there were things you wanted to ask your parents about, but you dare not. You dare not.
I've heard the rumors.
Yeah, but you'll watch movies from the 80s and even in the 70s, and it's like, especially in the 70s, you'd see this. There was always like an exposure scene where for 15 seconds, sometimes more, and this was particularly with female characters. Sometimes they didn't have anything to do with the story, and it was just like topless or bottom.
Well, I think that's about when they started figuring out that sex sells.
Well, and you had the whole sexual revolution, from the 60s, 70s, so it's like it didn't just sell, though it did sell, and it sold well.
So it was being pushed
but
as
it was being celebrated. Your body, and I mean, again, the human body is beautiful. They wanted to show that beauty. So you weren't necessarily watching, in fact, I wouldn't even say necessarily, you weren't watching an X-rated film to see a naked woman. That was just industry standard, because it wasn't shot to be sexual. It was shot, unless it was like, Godfather Part 1. And again, it wasn't necessarily going to be this, it wasn't a dirty scene. It was a beautiful, Michael Corleone marries Apollina, and they're in Italy, and you really don't see it coming, but she just kind of drops her top because it's their honeymoon. And there you go. It wasn't,
This is part of the story.
It was part of the story, and it's set to, it's storytelling. It's set to music. It's beautiful. It's a beautiful scene. She's a beautiful woman. It's a beautiful story.
I might have to go see this.
I have it on DVD if you want to borrow it
later this evening.
Yeah. But anyway, that being said, you had in Carrie, the very opening scene of Carrie is a woman's locker room, and it's just kind of full naked girls being girls. I have no idea if that's actually what goes on. I've never been. But anyway, all that being said, it was to be celebrated, and then I think they've, in the 80s to the 90s, had stepped away from the celebration and saying, well, we need to, we need to be more conscientious. I think FCC probably really kind of stepped up what they were doing as to what was being, broadcast on TV. But yeah, music videos and then movies in the 80s, it's like you would have things that were done sexually in those movies that would not be done later on without getting an R rating or an X rating.
And there was definitely, I think with everything, there is a time where, or a very short period of Wild West, where anything goes before they start figuring out, okay, no, maybe we shouldn't.
I think if ever an avenue to be explored, film has been one for the Wild West. Which I'll never think of the Wild West the same way again.
You've never heard that way?
No.
Oh,
I mean, I've heard of the Wild West, but I've never heard it in terms of this particular context, so that's great.
Yep. So that's like another, I don't know, the golden days of YouTube. Back in the Wild West, when no one knew what YouTube was or what to expect out of it, and people would just upload whatever garbage.
Yeah.
And sometimes those are the best videos. You look back on that and think, like, no one would think to upload that type of thing now.
Yeah. Well, a lot of those things that we would say became viral were things that you're just like, why is this on YouTube? Why did someone record this? And you're like, but it's funny, it's clever, it's cute.
Yeah.
And I think, back home, you think of all of those ones when you were younger that you're like, oh, you've got to watch this video, and it might be David After Dentist, the kid who's like, he's all messed up on drugs because he's had his dental work done, and he's sitting in the back of the car, and he's just on. You could tell he's on, and it's very funny. That he gets very, highs and lows. Not just the emotions of being a kid, but the emotions we all know of when we're on dental drugs. Oh, there goes my.
Oh, there goes your face. Okay, we'll bring you back.
So we've.
I was thinking this would be a good time to start wrapping up.
Yeah, so maybe closing thoughts.
I was gonna say I haven't seen that one, but I have seen plenty of people on dental drugs. It's a good genre.
It's a good drug. I mean, I've been on dental drugs.
I suppose this would be a good time to say too. Of like, I was very disappointed, I guess, by my reaction to it. I had the most mild reaction.
Yeah.
The only thing that happened is afterwards, when I don't remember doing this, but I pulled out my phone and I shared to Facebook stories, and it just was like, hi, I just got my teeth out, and that's it. That's all I did. It was so mild.
But I think you're a chill personality, so it's probably going to play toward the chill. Whereas other people who might be a little higher strung, they might be especially higher strung.
I certainly was probably at my most relaxed at that point because I just decided I don't like losing consciousness. That's why I don't drink very much. Or very often. I hate that idea of not remembering things. So I specifically remember when I got into the dentist's office, as soon as they pushed that or whatever they did, I don't remember if it was a mask or a needle or whatever they did to like put me under, because I chose to go completely under to get my wisdom tooth out. The instant they did that, I just like tangibly felt like I'm just gonna let go of and trust you. I'm letting go of control. So it was like the most relaxing sleep I ever had.
Well, that's it's cause to get back in there again soon.
I'm going to have to.
A good deep sleep.
These.
You got wisdom teeth coming in?
Yeah, because I got my bottom ones out.
Ah.
And then I have, actually these are molars. My top wisdoms are like way up here. We're hoping they just stay there.
We might double check. I don't think teeth are supposed to be that high.
Okay, here.
Okay.
I don't know. Wherever they are.
If they're removing things from here, I think you're going to have issues.
Here, there.
Yeah. Don't think that's the dentist you were visiting. Okay.
Yeah, these top molars are too far back. I have to get them out or they're just going to keep getting cavities. Anyways, we're getting tangented.
Yeah, so dental drugs, YouTube videos. So, yeah, I guess we're nearing the end of the program, right?
Yeah, so I was thinking to wrap up, it would be good to, what I'd ideally like to do is start building up a list of questions that like several episodes from now I could do like a rapid fire questions.
Yeah.
I don't have those yet.
Okay.
I think I do have one question I could ask.
Yeah.
That would be like the same list of questions I'd ask for every video or viewer. What would you say is the absolute most important thing in your life?
Wow.
I've gotcha.
I'd say, and I don't do a good job of it, so, obviously actions speak louder than words, but I'd say relationships are the most important to me. Relationships with family, relationships with friends, relationship with God. I don't think I do any of those very well, but I'm trying to do those better. But
and there's always room for improvement.
Yeah, there is this, hands down room for improvement. But trying to do those things better, relationships with people and relationship with God, and that's, I do, as you know, I'm very passionate about the art and the work, and I love what I do. I love that I'm able to do what I'm doing. But that becomes oftentimes obsessive. It becomes it can become a bad thing when when you're not sleeping, you're not eating right, you're not exercising, and you're just obsessing over the work and setting up the work.
Been there.
Yeah. So
we'll continue to be there.
I've been there for a number of years, and I'm really trying to do the relationship part better. And so that I hope that answers the question. But again, actions speak louder than words. So it'll be evidenced when it's actually done, right.
Cool.
Yeah. How about for you? Didn't think I was going to turn the tables on you.
No, I have thought about this before, but because there's a couple things really. I think because you're very Catholic, very devout with that, and getting to church.
It's kind of a
you do what you can.
I think Harry Connick Jr. said I'm a practicing Catholic, and I'll keep practicing until I get it right. So I'm still trying to figure out what it means and how to do it.
Yeah. But you have those beliefs.
Yeah.
Versus, I'm not. So, I think the most important things would be to enjoy life and to do it responsibly. So, to have fun with whatever you're doing. If you're creating art, if you like painting, if you like building houses, if you like throwing stones around in a gravel driveway, whatever it is that you enjoy, I don't know. People are weird. Whatever it is that you enjoy to
like
do
that neighbor we had. No.
and to clean up after yourself and to be able to take care of yourself and be healthy. And so that's where my passion for sustainability and environmentalism comes in, is that's the responsibility aspect of all this enjoyment we get out of this modern society, we have to deal with the repercussions. We have to clean up after ourselves and take care of the planet so that the enjoyment can continue.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, it definitely does.
Because I think that this life is all there is, so that's kind of where I put my value in. Is just enjoying the ride and yeah.
So do you think there'll be any Amazon left for your grandkids? And I'm not talking about Amazon or Amazon Prime. I'm talking about the Amazon rainforest.
I hate to say this, but no.
Yeah.
Man, because that's what was it, like 3, 4, 5 days ago, something like that, and people are already kind of forgetting about it, not talking about it, and it's still happening.
Yep.
Like.
Yep.
Yeah, I that's something that I'm so torn about, is like the enjoyment versus the environmental stuff. Wanting to make videos about video games versus I need to do something about the environment. I don't know how to contribute.
You know, those, as you well know, those trees are responsible for so much of the clean air
A lot.
that we're enjoying.
Although I've seen, I don't know the exact amounts, but I've heard that supposedly the ocean actually accounts for more than half of our oxygen.
Oh, and we're doing such a good job of taking care of that too, right?
Yeah. So ideally that would be something I'd like to do eventually, is to take all of these things and somehow put them towards that.
Yeah. I will say this for old Mother Nature. She's a hardy gal. And I've heard it said that we've screwed things up so badly already that you can't go back. However, nature, I have to tell you this about everything I know about nature. Nature finds a way. It's like you can pour cement all over a city and you're still going to have cracks form, and you're going to have plants shooting up from it, because nature always finds a way. So I do believe that we've destroyed so much. The Amazon won't be the Amazon we've known, and the glaciers aren't going to be the glaciers we've known. A lot, things will change, but I do think even as I think the planet will look very different, but I do think nature will win out, and you'll see something new, but it won't be those beautiful ancient forests that we've read about and that we've hopefully gotten a chance to visit before all this happened.
Yeah, and I don't yet have that information or all that data to really truly know if we're actually doomed, or if this is over exaggeration to get people's attention, to get people to do what we need to be doing.
I think it's more of the second. Yeah,
I'd like to think so.
Yeah,
but I don't know. I'll say here's hoping.
Here's hoping
that you're right. That nature will find a way. I'm blanking on that character name.
I'll think about 5 minutes after we end the show today.
From Jurassic Park.
Oh, the Chaos Theory?
Yes.
Jeff Goldblum's character. Yeah.
Yep.
So, yeah.
Alrighty. Well, thank you for your time.
Hey, absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
Just in time for the street cleaners to... Is that what that is, or is that a...
I think they're probably loading up.
Oh,
something.
gotcha.
I don't know.
Gotcha.
Well, I forgot to mention at the beginning, I'm hoping to make this a monthly thing, just because I could do it every other week, twice a month, but then it's just a matter of getting guests. So for the first, 5-ish episodes, I'll see if I can do monthly, and not just us, but I'll have me with other guests. So
I figured.
Yeah, I'm not gonna just throw this on you now. Okay, I'll see you next
Well,
month.
if you need a last minute guy, I'm not that far when I'm in town.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool.
All right.
Good show.
Cool. Thanks for watching.